that can make it so that those ads don't come up. And I recently installed one of those on mine, and actually I can show it to you. What is this one that we have? I'm trying to hover over them. There we go. Not that one. Ad block is a really popular one. So that is that works on Chrome. I think it works on some other browsers as well. And you can just like search it online, and you'll come up with a way to download it and some directions. But the other side of that is, I've noticed now, because they're so popular now, these ad blocking plugins, now these news sites that rely so heavily on advertising dollars have started to notify me when they see that I'm using an ad block, and they either say, we won't let you go to our website and read our stuff unless you have the ad block turned off, or they'll just notify me and say, did you know this is how we make money to continue for our service to be free for everyone? Please consider turning off your ad blocker. Which I think
that's another argument.
It presents like an interesting conundrum. So sort of where I've come to it is, if you're going to invest in, it's free. If you're going to use an ad blocker, I've started to I pay for the New Yorker and I get physical copies, but then I can also go to their website at any time, and then I can view all of their stuff without any ads. And so there's something that I'm supporting instead of supporting these ads, because us consuming their ads costs something. I don't know if you can't get just the cartoon. That would be great. The cartoons only New Yorker subscription.
Yes. It says it all.
So that was a little bit from some stuff I'm going to talk about later, but I did want to start by casting the net a little bit wider to talk about like why I was interested in coming here and talking with you all today. One of the main reasons being that like online privacy and how our data is collected as just everyday people who spend a lot of time online, whether it's for work or for our entertainment, whether it be on a mobile device, a desktop, or a laptop. Those behaviors that we participate in are changing. The ramifications of those behaviors are changing. The main reason being the FCC has, under our new presidential administration, is going to be acting very differently than it has in the past 8 years. The FCC is going to become much less regulatory in its attitudes, and as a result of that type of attitude, it's putting a lot of personal responsibility on us as consumers and users of the internet to become more informed about the issues and about the lack of regulations and what they mean for how we use the internet. So one of the sites here that I'm going to be citing a lot today is the Online Privacy Rights website. So, and this is one of the advocacy group of Privacy Rights Clearinghouse. And this is one of the websites that I'll be referring to a couple of times tonight. I highly encourage you to check it out. And before I go further, I should say that this is my professional website, and I'm not planning on taking any of this material that I talk about down today. So if you want to jot down my URL, you are more than welcome to go back to this at any point. And all of these links should stay good, and to refer back to this and to share it however you want. I would be more than happy for you to share it with friends and family. And there's also another section of my website that has like a contact form. So if you're interested in getting in contact with me, you can also do it from this website if you have more questions, or if the link is broken, whatever. So to go back to some of the reasons why we're here today. So the reason that as a librarian I'm here today is because of the lack of regulation. Our privacy as citizens of our country is in a sort of an unsure place. And again, there's a lot of personal responsibility with where government regulation is, for us to be more conscientious about what type of privacy we want and that we should be thinking about how that privacy or lack thereof contributes to our intellectual freedom. And intellectual freedom is a jargony term that we use in librarianship to talk about a section of like the First Amendment of, the part of the First Amendment is the right to produce and consume information. That is intellectual freedom. So privacy is very interwoven with our First Amendment rights. So again, part of this lack of regulation environment that we're living in now, corporations really have quite a bit of power to be doing what they want, and they have a captive market. For example, a figure that I pulled up is, so this is something that advocacy groups have been trying to get overturned by the FCC, and with the new administration, this probably is not something that's going to be happening, but your phone records are kept by your phone company for 18 months. And they remain on a server somewhere. And of course those things are protected, but anytime we talk about this type of data being retained, even if it's just metadata, even if it's just the information about the call, like time, what your location was when you made the call, that's very sensitive information. And we don't necessarily know, A, how the corporations that are retaining this information use it, and B, it's just sensitive to being hacked.
The longer it's out there.
The longer it's out there. And the advocacy groups that have been petitioning the FCC to change this rule really make a very good claim that 18 months is somewhat of an arbitrary date, and in most instances, there's no reason why that data needs to be kept that long. So I wanted to go over really quick, because I didn't know where everyone was going to be at with like their sort of technology know-how, so I want to be sensitive to that. But I wanted to talk about some of the main ways that like our data is collected, and ways that our privacy can maybe sometimes be compromised in ways that we're not aware of. So on the websites we use, whether or not we have login information or have like an account with that website is gathering information. Even if I'm just scrolling through something like gap.com and I've never bought anything, or I don't have an account with them, they're gathering information, and that's a Gap itself. And then websites like the Gap, like big corporations, they often sell that data to pretty much data brokers, who then use that data and further package it and sell it off for other people to use to then market products to you. So besides that, there's third-party cookies that websites employ. One of the most popular sort of privacy measures that people take are cookie blockers. So, and cookies, like in and of themselves, are not malevolent. I'm not anti-cookie. Let it be known. I'm not anti-cookie. But cookies just retain information like locally, like normally. But third-party cookies are sort of, I think about them like sort of web crawlers. So they're things like crawling on top of like Twitter or Gap.com, collecting information on you. And if you don't have a browser plugin that is stopping those, you have a whole other layer of information that's being gathered. So, and then the other layer of information, and this is something that we know like even less about, we don't know really very much of anything about the algorithms that are used to collect this data, because those are all like kept under lock and key. But your internet service provider and your cell service provider are also collecting data about how you are using your data and how you are using your wireless or broadband, or so there's lots of different ways that data is getting out there. And so I think I talked about briefly that the metadata versus the content data is becoming increasingly interwoven in how important it is. You know, they're both incredibly important. Sometimes people who advocate for more data collection or don't think we need to be regulating data collection very much by corporations will say that, well, they only collect metadata, or corporations will say, well, we only collect metadata. And that is sort of disconcerting because, so I found a really depressing quote. The former CIA and NSA director, Michael Hayden, is quoted as saying in a video that I share that we kill people based on metadata. And the video I found this from, this guy is like, Michael Hayden is doing a really good job at making himself into this like Bond villain figure. And in this video, he's totally full on Bond villain. So I recommend you checking it out. It gives out as much information as the content that the metadata is describing. So some of the ways that there's a couple of links that I have here too. And the second one is like another post on this blog where I found some really interesting information from like a very, like a conservative website that was very much pro-deregulating the FCC. And I was really interested in finding, content and news articles that were celebrating the deregulation of the FCC. So I go through one of those articles and I debunk some of the things that this think tank fellow at I think is a thinly veiled, like conservative think tank in DC, an article that he wrote, celebrating the deregulation of the FCC. There are a lot of holes there in the arguments that people say for not protecting our consumer data. So our data tells, whether it's metadata, whether it's the content itself, whether it's, we think about just, here's a post here from Twitter, here's a post in Facebook here, here's a purchase on Amazon.com there. These are what the information scientist Zeynep Tufekci calls your data crumbs. They don't necessarily give a compelling portrait like when they're separate, but it's when you put them together that we can create some really startlingly accurate portraits of who people are. Some of the ways that algorithms can now make predictions about people include predicting someone's sexual orientation, predicting whether or not they have a criminal record, how likely someone will be diagnosed with depression. It is depressing, yes. 90% of people who participated in this workshop were diagnosed with depression soon after. And this is a really fun one. Well, fun for him. If you're having an affair, using your Fitbit, if your partner is able to see when your heart rate is higher. If you're supposed to be out to a group, a business lunch over your lunch hour, but your heart rate is spiking in the 90s. That's yeah. Or a very spicy lunch.
Yeah.
So the crumbs do a lot, whether that's just metadata or whether that's content plus metadata. So if you're interested in learning more about data collection and ethics and data science or the algorithms that are being used to sort of correlate and make predictions about this data, there's two really awesome videos that I've been citing and I'll probably continue to cite. One is called Haunted by Data by this very smart person whose name I've ever heard and I'm not going to try to pronounce. But he's really interesting because he is a well-known data scientist. And this is a keynote that he gives at one of the preeminent data conferences in the country. It's called Strata and DeHoop. Really weird name. But it is his keynote, and he essentially shakes his finger at his colleagues and say, we need to do better. We are collecting too much data, we're not doing anything with it. And the stunning allegory that he makes is between data that we collect and nuclear waste. So I highly encourage you to look at that. And then this is a TED Talk by Zeynep Tufekci. She was a professor of mine at UNC, talking about how she became a computer scientist because she didn't want to have to deal with like morally sticky stuff. And now look where she is on a TED Talk stage talking about why human intelligence makes human morals more important. Which I think is encouraging in one way, to say that like, okay, so I was an English major and a music major. For someone to say like, I'm a data scientist, but we need more people with a background in like thinking about morality and ethics and who are good writers and thinkers to help move us forward culturally with all of this technology that we are being bombarded with. I think there's like a huge message of hope in that. And that's something that I try to instill in the students that I work with. So I didn't know how many people were going to show up. I did have a little activity, but we're zooming through too. So maybe instead of doing this activity, I'll just hear if you all have any thoughts, and if not, we can move on. So I copied and pasted here the Principles for Technology, Rights, and Opportunity, which was a document that was compiled and signed by a lot of different nonprofit organizations and institutions of higher learning after the FCC was sort of shook up following the change in administration. And let's look at some of the signers. So the American Library Association, Center for Media Justice, a lot of media organizations. Oh, this is interesting, I hadn't noticed before, United Church of Christ. They're so woke over there. Those United Church of Christ folks. Ugh, they know what's up. So I thought these different principles were really interesting, and if we had a bigger group, I was going to ask you all to sort of break off and talk about and maybe choose one of these principles to brainstorm like ways we could improve it. Because I think sometimes we forget that the technology that we're using wasn't created to be invasive and privacy reducing. It's just what we're doing with that. And particularly how corporations and people who make a lot of money off of our data have sort of made it in their image. And then as a result, the state, our governments have profited off of that. So I think that's really important to take a step back. Like, none of these technologies are innately like evil or unjust. So I think these principles helped us to remind us of ways they can improve. Improving openness, inclusion, speech, choice, privacy, opportunity, and access. Because there's so much opportunity there for the internet to level the playing field for so many groups of people that are traditionally marginalized, and for new ideas to come into our culture that might not have been introduced to a large group of people otherwise. So I'm just going to throw that at you. What does that make you think of? Do any of these things, does something come to mind that you all think of like, oh yes, if only we could be more like this. If only when I was online it was more like this. Have you ever thought that? I could start with an example, but you were starting to talk. Did you?
Go ahead.
So I read within the past like half year that when some of like the original founders of the internet got together, they assumed that everything online would become annotated. So like you would have, and to some extent it is becoming more so since that time with, comment sections, which unfortunately are like horrible cesspools of activity.
Right.
Now,
The first time you
Yeah,
just
so
off your
toxic.
website.
yeah. Ugh. But the founders of the internet saw it as a way to more openly exchange ideas. So they obviously didn't know what trolling was at the time. But the fact that someone could have a New York Times article up and someone from Washington, D.C. and someone from like Johannesburg, South Africa could start a dialogue or a discussion about an aspect of an article. And I wonder, now that we know what trolling is and that it is such a big problem with how we, with the sort of tone that's created online. Is trolling an inevitable part of the internet, or not? Or is it a product?
How would you control it?
Yeah, I mean,
I can't even imagine how you would.
yeah, I mean, it'd be violating people's,
Like
civil
snarky.
liberties. Yeah, to,
No snarkiness.
yeah, well, and, snarkiness to the person that wrote the article versus like me, who, it's not like my work that's out there on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was, when they founded it, they didn't put up regulations, they didn't foresee trolling, they didn't foresee an Amazon being a monopoly.
Yeah,
And now it's almost too late to backtrack and try and do something, unless you can prove some specific things, but that also goes back to intent and all kinds of shaky things that are hard to prove.
yes. Well, yeah, and at this point, with the enormous sway that, corporations just have in our culture and in our, it would really have to be the government that stepped in at this point to regulate the internet more closely. And they probably won't do that, but that is essentially the only body that is out there that could have the potential to structure the internet differently.
Right. Or to break up the monopolies like they did with AT&T.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Well, and it goes clear back to the FCC.
Yeah.
Under what, Reagan? Because when I was a kid and you saw political ads on television, I don't remember who the candidates were because we didn't have television until I was 10, but each party got to say, what this candidate got to say what his deal was about himself. And then they had to give equal time to the other candidates.
Right.
And mostly the candidates spent their time talking about themselves.
Yeah, because I didn't have enough time.
And all the advertising had to be equal.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to be honest. It was kind of who, what,
I
when,
didn't
and
know that.
where. In high school journalism class, you had to do who, what, when, and where, that's it.
Yeah.
Or you were in violation of a higher code of ethics.
Yeah.
And the Chicago Tribune was the map that you worked by, because that's what journalism was. And ever since that deregulation, I guess it was, under Reagan,
Interesting. And I wasn't aware of that
And you look
political
at what's
ads were so
happening.
regulated.
yes, and it was fair and honest.
Mm-hmm.
Where anymore, it's whoever's got the highest dollar.
And I find that really interesting that you point out that they only had time to focus on themselves. They didn't have
Well,
time to
I think there should be
sling
a law
mud.
that any candidate may only speak about themselves on an ad, but that'll never happen.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, 'cause all the-
It's no fun.
Yeah.
because all the political ads now are pretty much only focused on negative things about the other
And
candidate.
they're not even true,
Yeah,
Well,
no one
some
has
of
to-
them are, but a lot of them are just,
No one has to cite,
there's no regulation that
Yeah.
says
you have to be
you can't
truthful.
just tell a whopper about your opponent and get away with it.
The
And
Whopper bill.
I am offended that they pop up on your Facebook or on a link that you're following and reading an article, and here all of a sudden we have one of the
One of
ads
the candidates.
bashing one of the candidates. Like,
Yeah.
I want to watch this YouTube. I don't want to watch this ad again.
Yeah.
So I end up not watching YouTube at all because I don't want to sit through the ad, even for 30 seconds. I go.
Well, and one thing I've started doing, because I started to really get ticked off when my colleagues would show YouTube videos in their classes, and then so often you would have to make your students sit through God knows whatever ad
Yeah.
before you watched a video. And it could be something as innocuous like, oh, here's the Jasper String Quartet doing the first movement of the Jupiter String Quartet. But then it's an ad for Cheetos, or you just never knew
Yeah.
what it was going to be. You can, I started to tell these professors, and I've started to do it when I can, you can download videos. It is technically illegal. But it's very easy to download YouTube videos and then just show them, or
Makes good sense.
because I just can't, especially if I'm only like teaching that material once. It's like, I don't want to deal with spending like that 2 extra minutes, just adjusting the volume or showing the ad. And so there's an interesting, so I just was reading Adweek because I was preparing for that analytics marketing class that I taught. And there's been a lot of kerfuffle with advertisers and brands and YouTube, because YouTube algorithms, and YouTube is owned by Google, so their algorithms have not been satisfactorily parsing out and for brands which ads or which videos to put their ads on to match up with consumers. So something like Procter and Gamble, like baby shampoo ads were ending up on like ISIS terrorist videos, like recruiting videos. And these brands are like, what is going on? Get our ads off of these videos. And YouTube is working on it, but there are some brands that have completely removed themselves from like the huge ad revenue that they're getting to protect their brand, because the algorithms, they haven't developed those algorithms to be good enough to parse out, okay, this is the type of video that Procter & Gamble would be okay having this brand on. So the algorithms are lagging behind that when it comes to ads, and money is starting to suffer.
But now they're popping up like in the middle of something they're watching.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
I mean, I'm done watching that.
Yeah.
When that ad comes up, I'm done with whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I just click out of it and I'm out of there.
So in the ad blocker, I've been meaning to look into this, and I don't know, but the ad blocker that I put on, which again, it's just called ad block, I have not been seeing as many videos on YouTube when I watch YouTube videos. And I don't know if that has anything to do with that. I haven't done any research yet, but maybe that would do something to it. So I wanted to draw to your all's attention some advocacy and consumer privacy groups, particularly this, the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse that I showed you all earlier. They maintain a list of data breaches. So if you feel like you're looking for information like, oh, I think my data was hacked from this website, or I have an account, this is a website to go to, because they keep like a very accurate list of like known data breaches that have happened online. And I'll go over this site a little bit too, but this is a really amazing site that I wanted to refer you all to. So this is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and again, like a nonprofit organization that was created for consumer advocacy and protection. And they have developed like a ton of tutorials and overviews and briefings. So if there's any, I really encourage you all to take a look at these. How to enable two-factor authentication. If you aren't familiar with two-factor authentication yet, I highly recommend it. How to avoid, how to delete your data securely, and some more, these are a little bit more complex. These are for encrypting your data for text messaging if you don't use an iPhone, and for encrypting your data so it can't get back to your internet service provider or IPN. But I highly recommend it. Oh, the two-factor authentication?
Is that getting into the fake news sorts of?
No, that is, if you have a Google account, it's probably tried to push you to do this already. Has it popped up and say like, put in your phone number, and we'll occasionally like send you a code to your phone in addition to your regular logon procedure?
Yeah, no.
It's a great idea.
Is it?
Yeah, well, from a privacy standpoint, yeah.
I'm suspicious.
It's a
That's how I
pain in the
got
butt.
it. I'm suspicious.
It's a pain in the butt though, because what it means is that I have to have these two things
Right.
together at all times. If I leave my phone at home, that's like, okay, I can't log in and teach this class now.
Oh.
So that is, it's a huge pain in the butt. But it's a pretty good thing. I feel like Martha Stewart. It's a good thing. That's what I'm gonna fall back on. Martha Stewart of privacy. So yeah, if you want some more information on like two-factor authentication, highly recommend this site. And more places, Google's the first one I can think of because I have a Gmail account, and so it's asked me to do two-factor. But there are lots of different kinds of sites going to that now. So something that comes up in these talks of like privacy are the right to be forgotten, which is something that has really taken hold in the EU, but has been less successful in the US. As far as like legislation that forces search engines, ISPs, anything that's collecting data on you that can then be searched and found by someone else. The law saying that this person, if it comes from a judge, you must rewrite your algorithm so this data cannot be linked to, or this data or this content online cannot be searched. So they have had little success in the US, and the way that one of the first bills was introduced was as such that it was pretty like ludicrously like overstepping. So like the language that was in the bill was so that someone could petition to have information about them removed online if it was no longer current material to current public debate. There's not an exception for public figures or prominent business people and others, which is a big difference between EU laws. There's a really great article. Oh, bother, it's gonna go in. This article talks a lot about, in the first year of the EU's right to be forgotten law, like some of the instances of removal requests and what has been denied and what has been approved. For instance, often the removal requests are denied if the person is, a convicted sex offender, if they're a public official. There is, because in those instances when there is that pervasive public interest for that material to be available for the public to be able to find. But when it's things like a political activist who is stabbed at a protest asking for a link to an article about the incident to be removed, someone who's very clearly a victim, and in a very specific instance. So I'm not surprised that this is not more popular in the States right now, because the EU has the power at this point to tell Google or pretty much any company, you have to rewrite your algorithm so this specific content cannot be searchable. So I don't know what that means for Google's workflow, but I'm sure that they have to have if not a team, people who are devoted just to working with that legislation and working with those requests that have been approved. So there is some good information if you are interested in erasing yourself from parts of online or from accounts that you used to have. There's some really good information out there on how to do that. One of the instances that I always use is that often if you have ever had a Google account of any kind, you also have a Google Plus account, which I don't know if you're familiar with Google Plus, but it was sort of trying to be like a LinkedIn sort of thing for a while, and it hasn't really caught on. But a lot of times Google auto creates those Google Plus profiles, even if you don't sign up for that service. So, and it's also difficult Google doesn't make it easy to actually close your whole account. And Twitter is another one of those instances where they keep your data for 30 days after you deactivate your account. So there's some pretty good resources online if you want to erase yourself from the internet. I'll just show you what this looks like. And this pretty much, the big four: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Google Plus are the most popular ones. I like this. But then what I found most interesting, and what I found another article about, are the scraps. So again, we talked about how your data gets bundled and then sold out more and more sort of like those subprime mortgages. I don't know if you all follow that, but it started to seem like eerily similar. So these data brokers and these searches, there's sort of some main big ones, and where a lot of this information ends up are like on background check websites that people like private investigators or whatever, or like HR departments will have accounts with to look up if people have criminal records. But there are some ways to remove yourself from those background check sites, but it usually takes a little bit more time and effort. But if y'all want to go there, if you want to truly disappear.
I'm pretty clean.
So I wanted to bring that up. So, okay, this is what I'll just leave you with. And again, this is on my site. This isn't going anywhere. I sort of parsed out some things that I think that people should sit down and do this week. And then I've parsed out things that maybe you should think about doing, depending on where you're at. So these are my opinions. Well, yeah, that probably shouldn't be on. This is a think about as well. I was getting a little zealous. Do any of you have Android smartphones? Do any of you have smartphones, or you have iPhones? iPhones? Interesting. Yeah, because iPhone has its own built-in encryption software for short messaging systems. That's what SMS is. So all of your text messages are encrypted. Only you and the person who received them can read them. So not even Apple can go in and read them. Android, that is not the case. And I have heard it said by like hacking people on some of these websites that sending a text message on an Android phone is the equivalent of like sending a postcard.
Mm-hmm.
It is just like
Cool.
out there. So there are more and more systems that are becoming available for your non-iPhone smartphone that encrypts the data. So yeah, I obviously am the one that made this, so I think these are pretty good things, and these are things that like I have done within the past couple months since I found out I was doing this workshop.
I'm still trying to figure out how you delete stuff off of your cloud.
Oh yeah, which cloud application are you using? Oh, is it iCloud?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh.
It says your iCloud account is full, you can't,
Yeah, you have to.
you have to buy some more
Space.
Right. Yeah.
Well, how about I just delete a whole bunch of stuff out of there if I could get in there to see what's there?
Mm-hmm. Oof, and that is a very specific like Mac user problem. Do you have your Mac like desktop or laptop, and you have your iPhones and they're all synced together?
We've got mini iPods and
Yeah.
Mm.
iPads and our cell phones.
Sure. Okay.
And what I've started doing is just loading stuff onto a separate drive,
Yeah.
because then I know I've got it.
Yeah. And I've started to be really careful with my Google Drive account because it's the same thing. Once you hit that max, it's they make it as such that even deleting stuff doesn't
No, it doesn't.
impact the cap, because what it makes you do is it makes you buy more of their product.
It's the same way with the cloud. It's just, you get.
With the iCloud, yeah.
Yeah, and they constantly are telling you need to upgrade your storage. for
So-
more money.
At that point, what I would recommend is, if you all are seeking out a new cloud solution, a free, like, almost truly, well, yeah, get rid of everything.
Yeah.
That's my professional recommendation.
I went into settings and just shut the cloud off, but I still get the notification.
Oh yeah, that's such a pain. So Dropbox is still like the go-to just free cloud space. If you have stuff that you just want to drag and drop and be able to share with someone, like through an email address, this is still like the go-to. But if you're if you're not interested in sharing stuff, if you're just storing stuff for yourself individually to use on a device, Dropbox isn't as helpful. Yeah. They have you reined in now
Yeah.
that
your iPod is full.
So when you talked about a password manager, you
Yeah.
change all your passwords, I mean, yes,
Mhm.
and then after a while you just forget what they all are.
Yeah.
So that's why, so I have LastPass. And LastPass is probably the most well-reviewed free password manager. So I have a couple links to PC World, a tech
So
site.
what does that do?
Yeah, how does that
Records
work?
your-
So what it does is like, so this is a plugin. I guess I could show it to you. Oh, so I haven't added Dropbox to my LastPass yet. So what you can do after you've like downloaded it and it's on your extension, or it's a browser extension, I want to save my Dropbox password. So I click this. So, okay, so that's duplicate. Oh, okay. So they're calling me out because they
Yeah.
see that the password that I have for this Dropbox is the same as a password that I have for something that I've already logged in LastPass. So they're like, y'all better change your password. You do not have to change your passwords to everything to sign up for this. What it just does is it stores your password, and then it will, as long as the extension is enabled, when you go to that URL after that time, it will just upload the password for you. But what it will also do,
So it avoids that save password.
yeah, it does. But what it also does is it will also help you to come up with a better password for something. So like I could go into my like an American Express card and it says like, do you want to change this password? And then it will like auto put in a password. And then how it works, and then I also have it on my phone. And so if I want to get into it on my phone, I have to open it with my thumb because I have a touch identification. So, but if I don't want that, I can turn off. So from the color that it is, it's turned on right now. So any site that I go to, it'll like auto populate the password.
Okay.
Oh, that's handy. You don't
But if I
sit
have
there
it
and
turned
try to
off,
remember it.
yeah, exactly. And it's not, so those are cookies. The things that aren't a password manager that pre-populate your password, those are cookies. And those are very vulnerable to hacking, and sometimes they're not. There are native cookies that are just like operating from your browser that like auto-populate your password when you're like buying something online. But it's really hard to tell whether something that's a third party or something that's a native cookie, like data saver. So that's why when you get like a cookie blocker, you lose all of that cushiness of just having things auto-populate for you. But then a password manager like LastPass can help you add that back in.
Old school. I write all my passwords down in a little book. 'Cause I figure anything that I put on the internet is fair game to anybody that wants in there. And there's it keeps popping up on my computer. You want something, a program similar to that, and I was thinking, yeah, I could put all my passwords in this. Somebody hacked that, and it'd have passwords for
Right, for
everything in
everything.
my life.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking about that too, and I was downloading it, and guess what I did with the password for my password manager? I wrote it down, and it's sitting on my desk. So it doesn't truly solve a problem, it manages a workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right, you know, and I think that's why the practice of,
And if you have to be in a lot of passworded programs, like when I used to work for Marriott, everything was passworded beyond ridiculous. And I mean, something like that could be very handy, but I would be willing to bet Marriott doesn't allow you to use that.
yeah, I wonder if they would have like
They still
systems,
don't. They're still
system
on the
things
DOS
where you
system.
can.
All of their reservations, their check-in
That
is on,
sounds horrible.
because DOS never crashes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you
Never
want to go
crashes.
foolproof. I mean, I worked at a library once where we used the card catalog system to double check when like our computer system was telling us the wrong thing. So and that was like only 6 years ago when I was a youngin'. So are there any,
These are all on your blog, okay.
these are all on my blog. Oh, something that I was doing research on was, I had to add this too. Some like huge corporation local internet service providers. Do any of you have like a more local internet service provider than like, I have Charter Spectrum.
And that's like,
Yeah, and it's super good.
Wish I had.
I mean, it's been super reliable for us. My partner and I are turning off our internet for the summer as a grand social experiment. Only one will live. So I was doing some research into like, okay, maybe we could get something local, #local, but I wasn't finding anything that had good reviews or, for instance, Taco Bell Wi-Fi is more reliable than this, is my favorite. Sorry, Centric Internet Services. But a lot of the ones that I was finding are situated around Helena. So it seems like Helena and like their area, yeah,
Oh, yeah, probably.
has a lot more options when it comes to like non-corporate or national internet service providers. But we don't have all that much. VPNs, I should probably mention real quick before I let you go. VPNs,
Scroll up.
yeah.
I want to see that requires you to change browser. Look for, okay.
Oh yeah, so this is Tor.
Yeah, okay.
And so it has its own browser that it has you use. So everything is encrypted within the browser. And then there's some websites that won't let you use Tor browser on it. And it does funky things to your browsing data. It's not like a normal browser. I've considered downloading it to look into it. A VPN is something else people have been using to try to prevent their internet service provider from collecting their data. Because what a VPN does is like it acts as an encryptor blocker. But then what it does is the VPN can do the same thing as your ISP. Your VPN also has a server that is collecting that data for whatever short period of time. So if you're a paranoid person, the same thing can happen to a VPN and how it collects your data and where that data goes as can with where your data is stored with an ISP. But you can pay to get a more sophisticated VPN if you want something that is like more secure than something that is free, which the data experts that I read online recommend a paid service VPN over a free VPN if you're interested in going that way. And I have a link to some VPNs if you're interested in looking up some of those.
We're probably not that interesting people.
Well, it's good to know your options.
Turn off your wireless when not in use.
Yeah, that's something that I just put up there for y'all to think about is I know some people that do that because your network is vulnerable to hacking even when you're not using it. So I haven't done too much research and I haven't seen this like official, like a maneuver that is officially like endorsed by anything I've read online. It's just something that I know people do. Yeah.
What's the difference between turning off your Wi-Fi network and having the airplane mode turned on?
Sure. So airplane mode is just for your individual device, but if you like turn off your Wi-Fi, no one can use your Wi-Fi. So airplane mode is just for the individual device.
Well, I mean, like, I don't have Wi-Fi, I just use it when I come to the library
Oh,
or
okay.
something.
Mhm.
So if I turn off Wi-Fi in that case,
Mhm.
what's the difference between that and airplane?
Oh, and airplane mode. So airplane mode will turn off everything. It'll turn off your data, it'll turn off your Wi-Fi, and it will turn off your Bluetooth. But turning off your Wi-Fi will just turn off like the little bling bling that your device is doing to try to connect to a Wi-Fi network. But it won't affect your data, so you'll still be able to receive calls and receive text message, and you'll still be able to use your Bluetooth to connect to like other Bluetooth-enabled devices.
So you don't need Wi-Fi for that?
No, as long as your data is running.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and if anyone has any other questions and they want to stick around and chat, I'm more than happy to do that. But it's a beautiful evening, so I'll let you all go. And again, it's JackiePaigeWilkinson.blog is my website, and I encourage you to use any of these resources and to contact me if you have questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Interesting.